Hello, Silvassa connectors. This is Dr. Kristen Race. I am so excited to be here with you guys today. If you can hear me, can someone just give me a yes in the chat? It'll be really good news if you can hear me because I know you cannot see me. We have been battling our internet. I don't know whether it's our internet connection or the CrowdClass platform or something's been going on, but the video is very choppy and heavily delayed. So I made the decision that it would be better off if you could hear me well, and maybe we'll try the video again a bit later and see if that starts to work. But I also want to introduce you to Kenny Reisman. Kenny Reisman is my partner actually at Mindful Life, my other little project. And he is here to help us, to help kind of MC this workshop today. So I will turn it over to him for a moment and then we'll get started.
Great, Kristen. Thanks for turning it over to me. Same deal for me. If people can just kind of give throw a favorite emoji into the chat there to let me know that I am being heard. I think Kristen, yes, and Carrie has said yes as well. So thank you so much. We do know we're in tech. What are we in tech, Kristen? Tech crisis when I get called in to try to solve things as well. But I'm so glad to be here with all of you Silvassa folks. Just a quick word. I'm here to kind of help facilitate this so Kristen doesn't have to multitask this operation. A few things about this platform. It really is a great platform, Crowdcast. We love it. The chat, I think many of you have found that. That's a great place if you run into any sort of issues, tech issues, just buzz me in there. I'll keep an eye on that while Kristen is talking. Also, Kristen designs these to be fairly interactive, so she'll throw a few questions out there to you all and ask you to respond in the chat. So the chat's a great spot to do that. Next, below the video screen, I think right now it says Silvassa, Mindfulness Meditation in the Brain. Below that, there are a couple places to go. If you have a question that's more of a content question as compared to technical question, put it in the Ask a Question area. I'll be paying attention to that as well. And there'll be different spots where Kristen asks if there are any questions, and I can look real quickly to there and make sure you are being heard. So that's a great spot there. And then also, if everybody can look below that screen, next to Ask a Question, it says Polls. And I think it'd be wonderful if everybody took a quick moment, click on polls. Kristen has put a poll in there. How much meditation experience do you have? Click on that and let's get some votes going and see where I see some votes coming in. So that is fantastic. I think people are finding that. Again, I'm here to be of support for you all, for Kristen and for you as the participant. If anything comes up, just throw it in the chat and I will be paying attention. So Kristen, I think they came for you and not me. So let's turn it right back over to you.
Great. Well, I thought that it would be nice to start with a practice. In all of our Silvassa meetings, we like to start with some kind of a mindful moment. We really integrate this practice into all aspects at all levels of the company. So we are going to do a practice called box breathing. And the way that box breathing works is if you can visualize a box, you are going to inhale for the count of 4, then you hold for the count of 4, exhale for the count of 4, and then pause or hold for the count of 4. So there's going to be a little animation that comes up on your screen, and I'll guide you through the first one. You'll have a couple more visual boxes. And then I invite you just to close your eyes if you're comfortable and do a couple of rounds of the box breathing on your own. So 2 more, we'll do 5 rounds altogether. The first I will walk you through. The next one, the next 2, you can kind of visually take yourself through. And then the last 2 will be on your own. Okay, so go ahead and get in a mindful position that feels comfortable for you. And exhale all your air out. And we will start with an inhalation. And hold. Exhale. Hold. Inhale. And 2 more on your own. And you can go ahead and open your eyes. So I'm going to talk in a little bit later about how that box breathing practice impacts our brains. I know I needed that just now. I'm sure Kenny did as well. But I am so excited about this workshop today. I have been working in the field of mindfulness for about 15 years now. And I've always focused on how we can integrate these practices into our lives in simple ways. When I was first approached by Salvasa, I had this major aha moment. And I was struck by how much time I have spent teaching people how to integrate mindfulness into their parenting, into their work, into their workouts, into their meals. Yet I had never really thought about how well it integrates into our skincare routines. And it also made me realize that while I personally had devoted so much time and thought to my personal growth, my fitness, my nutrition, I was completely neglecting my own skincare. So this partnership has really been life-changing for me in so many ways, as I know it's going to be for you as well. Now, in our last training, we talked a lot about why mindfulness is so relevant in our culture right now. If you are in the chat, maybe can you just give a little yes if you were able to attend the last training? And if you were not able to attend the last training, that is not a problem at all. I think Kenny's going to post a link in the chat to that recording so you can check it out at your convenience. And I think that training provides some great context as to why Salvasa and integrative beauty are so relevant right now. And also why mindfulness is going to be a key differentiator as you speak to people about how you can help them improve their lives from the inside out. So for tonight's workshop, we are going to dive a bit deeper into how our brains work, how meditation works to enhance brain functioning, and how you can start, sustain simple practices, as well as more ways to integrate practices into your day. So we have a lot to do. We better get started. We're going to dive right in. I do want to give you a quick review of just a few of the key points from our last training. First, we are stressed. We have busy lives and the demands on our time are never ending. We are expected to be constantly accessible to everyone. And our brains are exhausted by constant distractions, and as well as all of this chaos, which has a significant impact on our mood, on our behavior, on our health, and of course, on our skin. And this stress creates an imbalance in our brains. Essentially, our brains interpret all of this chaos, from traffic jams to overloaded inboxes to long lines at Starbucks, as stress. And in turn, it elicits a stress response, which stimulates the survival mechanisms in our brains. And we end up spending a lot of our days in survival mode, which makes us irritable, anxious, impulsive, and often feeling disconnected. So that's the bad news. the good news is that when we can integrate simple mindfulness practices into our day in ways that strengthen key structures in our brain, we can offset a lot of those negative impacts of the stress response. And as we do this, we feel happier, we're less anxious, we're more productive, we're more connected to the people around us, and we see improvements in our health, our sleep, and of course, our skin. So again, for more on exactly how all that works, I'd really encourage you to take a look at that last workshop. And if you do have questions at any time as we go through this content, again, feel free to post them in the question section. We'll be sure to make sure we have time for those at the end as well. So what is mindfulness? There are a lot of definitions, and I happen to really like one I heard from Dan Harris recently, which was mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your brain at any given moment without getting carried away by it. And I love this definition. Last week, I was traveling for work and my husband was traveling as well. And we have 2 teenagers, as well as a 22-year-old nephew that live with us. So they were left at home without any, I would say, real adults there to monitor them. My 22-year-old nephew is great, but I don't know if that can be considered an adult yet. But I get back to my hotel room and I text my daughter Macy at around 9 p.m. and there's no response. Now, this is incredibly odd because I'm certain that she is able to text me back typically quicker than I can even finish typing my text. Her response time is unbelievable when it comes to texting. So I immediately start to panic. And my mind started to go from everything, convincing myself there was a gas leak in the house. They were all unconscious. The house had blown up, or they were having some kind of raging party that was so loud that she couldn't hear the ping on her phone. I was certain the dog was left outside and freezing. All of these places that your mind tends to go. But as I took a few breaths, I remembered that she had been at soccer practice. She had just gotten home and she was probably in the shower. And sure enough, 5 minutes later, I get that text back. She was in the shower. So mindfulness is, again, it's that ability to know what's going on in our head without getting carried down some dark rabbit hole that tells you that your children have blown up in a horrible house fire. Now, mindfulness is both a skill that we train our brains to develop, as well as a practice that we bring into our day-to-day lives. So in the chat, I'm curious, what is a skill that you intentionally work on in your life? So take a moment, and what is a skill that you intentionally work on in your life?
So, Kristen, I posted that question in the chat. Hopefully we get some folks chiming in, and I'll let you know as they do. Okay, here we go. Eating mindfully is a skill. Being present, patience. Patience, Christine Clark said patience. That's one that I am working on intentionally in my life these days. Loving it, actually.
Yeah, and those are great examples. Certainly eating is something we tend to do very mindlessly. So it is a skill that we have to work on if we want to improve our awareness while we're eating. And mindfulness is also a skill, and we develop mindfulness through both formal and informal mindfulness practices. So a formal mindfulness practice, it would be considered something you do daily, like mindful breathing, a body scan, mindful eating. And I think of our formal mindfulness practices as bicep curls for your brain. They make key structures in our brain stronger, which does 2 things for us. First, it offsets the impact of that stress response. And second, it helps us to bring more mindful awareness into our day-to-day lives. Now, we also develop the skill of mindfulness through informal practices, things you integrate into your existing day. So examples of informal practices could include things like a gratitude practice, integrating a gratitude practice into your skincare routine, which we'll talk about, a 3-breath micro breathing practice before a meeting, practicing mindful listening as you walk your child to school. And I'm going to talk some more about these informal mindfulness practices in a bit as well. The practice of mindfulness is really a way of living. And it's simply trying to be aware of the present moment as much as we can. Now, can you be 100% mindful all the time? I would argue no, it's not possible. But we certainly can get a heck of a lot better at it than we are right now. All of us can get better at it. And the better at it that we get, the more benefits we receive. So let's start with a simple formal practice, and then we'll talk a bit more about the science around all of this. So a common formal practice to start with is a mindful breathing practice. So we're going to do a short mindful breathing right now. Again, I would ask you, as long as you're not driving, to get into a mindful position that feels comfortable for you. I would invite you to sit upright, but relax your shoulders, close your eyes, or bring your gaze to your lap in front of you. And take a few deep inhalations and exhalations just to settle in. And then you can just let your breath return to its natural rhythm. No need to force anything. And the idea with mindful breathing is we bring awareness to each inhalation and each exhalation. That's our point of focus. And as your mind wanders away from the breath, simply notice that your mind has wandered and bring it back to the next breath. So go ahead with your awareness on your breathing. We'll do this for just a moment or so, and then we'll talk some more about it. And you can go ahead and blink your eyes open if they were closed. Take a deep breath in and exhale it out. Now, I am curious, in the chat, full disclosure, no judgment, I want you to rank from 1 to 10 where your mind was during that exercise. So a 10 would mean that you are the Dalai Lama. You are focused on every single breath. You have this down. A 3 would mean you feel a bit more like a 3-year-old with attention deficit disorder. So go ahead And I see a few responses coming in. And I think the interesting thing about this is as long as I've been doing this, 12, longer than that, probably 20 years now. I guess I've probably been teaching for a little over 12 years. There are days where I feel like the Dalai Lama, and there are a lot of days where I still feel like that 3-year-old. And all of that is okay. Even on the days when you feel like the 3-year-old, you're still doing amazing things for your brain. So I'm also curious, because I had some interesting thoughts come up. Share in the chat, what is the wackiest, craziest thing you thought of while you were meditating just now? And I can tell you that I thought a lot about whether Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston are really going to get back together. So I don't know if anybody else had that thought. I have no idea where it came from. But go ahead and we'll have some fun with this and share if you thought of something rather interesting, where your mind went. And, this practice, this is going to be the hardest practice I teach you, I think, are these formal practices. And the reason that they are so difficult is because mind wandering is a part of the human condition. And, we hear this excuse all the time. My mind is way too busy to meditate. Well, guess what? Welcome to the human condition. We all have busy minds. This is what our minds do. Our habit is for our brain to wander. And to meditate takes intention. And that's one of the mantras we're going to be talking about with Silvassa is intention over habit. Now, I start my day with 5 minutes of mindful breathing. And when we practice mindful breathing, we strengthen our prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for things like attention, impulse control, problem solving, forward thinking, positive emotions, engaging with the people around us, pretty important part of your brain. And it sets the tone for my day when I start my day this way. I notice a huge difference on days that I practice and days that I don't. When I practice, I am more patient. I am more clear about what I need to be doing and when. I feel happier. I'm way more productive, and I think I'm a much more pleasant person to be around. And the other thing that I notice is the more consistent I am with my practice, the easier it becomes. So I still may think of Brad and Jen, but I'm able to refocus and come back to my breathing more quickly. So let's talk a little bit about the neuroscience of this. Speaking very simply, we have kind of 2 distinct ways of interacting with the world. The first is our default network, and then we have our direct experience network. So starting with that default network, I want you to imagine sitting on a deck or a patio in a comfortable lounge chair, kind of like this photo here. It's Saturday afternoon, and as you close your eyes, instead of thinking about that warm sun on your face, the cool breeze, or the drink in your hand, you start thinking about a comment that someone made at work, what you're going to make for dinner, whether that pizza you're craving is what you should be eating, what you need to buy at the grocery store, the fact that your car needs an oil change. This is our default network in action. And it's the network in our brain that we use for planning, for daydreaming, for ruminating. We use it when we think about ourselves and other people. And it's the network that your brain likely shifted to a few times when we did that breathing practice, or even the box breathing practice a few minutes ago. Now, this default network is working for most of our waking hours. And there's not anything wrong with this network, but we don't want to limit ourselves to being caught up in it all of the time. Now, research out of Stanford University shows that when we're in this default state, our brain wanders in and out of 4 general tasks. The first is commentary. These are opinions and judgments about what's going on around us, thinking about the way things should or they should not be. The next is time travel. This is remembering and rehearsing. We spend our time thinking about the past, the future. This can easily turn into regretting and worrying, and it often causes us to miss out on the present moment. And the third is self-referential processing. So this is our brain interpreting what's happening around us to give us a sense of self. It's things like thinking, I'm the kind of person who likes this or does that. I would hate ziplining because I'm not adventurous. Or I would not like that movie because I don't like sci-fi. This type of thinking often leaves us less open to things that are outside our comfort zone. And then finally, this is a big one, social cognition. Thinking about other people, thinking about what we think of them, what they think of us, and how we compare. This one, I can tell you, I think gets heightened to extremes in the teenage years, but that's a big one as well. So looking back at that meditation we just did, I'm curious, which one of these 4 general tasks do you think you went to most? Or where does your mind go most when you find yourself lost in thought? And as an example, when I think about, me thinking about Jen and Brad is number 1. That's commentary about the world around me. It's what should or should not be happening. Now, it's important to acknowledge, sorry, I need a quick drink of water, that from an evolutionary perspective, this default state helped us in a lot of ways. When we weren't being chased by those saber-toothed tigers, it was really helpful to think about where those tigers were and how we can protect ourselves from them. But now, more often than not, that default state is spent thinking about what's wrong with the present moment, with other people, with ourselves, and how things should be better. And we all know what it's like to experience this state. You can see how if you spend too much time in this default network, it can lead to unnecessary stress. And now more than any other time in our history, because of our phones and technology, we have more triggers pulling us into that default state than ever before. Research shows that when our default state is active, we are less perceptive to what's going on around us. Our attention is poor. We're easily distracted. Our sensations are muted, and food and drink don't taste as good. And people who are depressed and anxious tend to spend most of their time in this default state. Now, as connectors, a key aspect of your job is to create authentic connections with people. So think about how detrimental it is to that process of connecting when we're less perceptive, when our attention is poor, when we're easily distracted. Being able to tap into that direct experience is extremely helpful when it comes to building connections. So let's tap into that. Let's go to direct experience. When we're in our direct experience, we see different areas of our brain lighting up. So areas of the brain like the insula, the part of our brain that perceives body sensations, the anterior cingulate cortex, which monitors our attention. When our direct experience network is active, we're not caught up in thoughts about the future or the past, but we're just experiencing information as it comes through our senses in real time. So sitting on that porch, we would feel the warmth of the sun on our skin. You would notice the cool breeze in your hair. You would savor the taste of that cold beverage in your hand. Essentially, you're being mindful. Now, I use this picture of the person smelling the flower as a concrete example of how we activate that direct experience. And through our mindfulness practice, we focus our attention on that incoming data, the sensations of our breath, the sounds that we hear, and we reduce the activation of the default circuitry, and we increase the activation of the areas of our brain associated with direct experience. So that was a big chunk of information of neuroscience that I just threw at you. So I want to take a moment here and see if, Kenny, if you're seeing any questions come up. If you want to throw a question in the chat, if that's easy right now, then I can address those before we jump into a few more formal and informal practices.
Right, Kristen. So far, no questions seem to be coming up, but we will for sure keep an eye on them. And if they pop up at any time, I will let you know. Great.
We'll keep rolling then. Okay, so my breathing practice, like I said, this is the practice I use first thing in the morning to strengthen my direct experience. But I also use a lot of practices throughout the day to bring me back to my direct experience. One of those is box breathing. Oops, I went ahead there. So box breathing that we did at the beginning is a practice used by all kinds of people. It was most recently, I was reading about its use with Navy SEALs. And it's amazing for getting yourself out of fight, flight, or freeze. And it's also huge for focus and attention. So I like to use this at the beginning of a webinar, at the beginning of a meeting, anytime I really want to focus people and get them present, or focus myself and bring myself present. So think about, another thing to think about is I'm curious, what are the things that you do in your life already, not necessarily mindfulness practices, but what are things you do where you feel like that direct experience is naturally strong? So you can share those in the chat. A lot of times it's things like, when I play tennis, I'm very aware of my direct experience. When I play music, when I'm creating art. So I'm curious, what are some of the things that come up for you that activate that direct experience? Soccer was always a big one for me back when I was playing soccer. And interestingly enough, another way that I often activate my direct experience is walking my dog. It is something that I do every day, regardless of the weather. As you can see, he needs that walk. And I once heard someone say, if you want to know how to be mindful while walking your dog, just watch your dog. And it's true. If you watch your dog on a walk, they are listening to all the sounds that they hear, very curious about the sounds. They are aware of what they're seeing. They are smelling. They are doing all of these things that activate their direct experience. And so what I tend to do is I take my dog and we go to this off-leash dog park and kind of walk down this trail. And I will start my walk by spending a few moments listening to the sounds that I hear, or trying to identify the furthest sound that I hear. And then I'll spend some moments just looking, very focused at my environment, seeing if I can notice something I've never noticed before on this very familiar walk. In the summer and spring, it's a great time to smell the smells of the grasses and the flowers and the trees. So all of these simple things bring me back to my direct experience. And you don't have to live in a beautiful resort town to make this happen. I happen to live in a beautiful place, but just walking down the city street and giving yourself 30 seconds to listen to the sounds that you hear is a great way to activate that direct experience. Now,
Kristen, if I may interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, just want to acknowledge Lisa in the chat said when she's trying a new recipe, and I've heard you talk over the years just about how cooking can be such a mindful experience for people.
Absolutely. Yeah, the smells, the sounds, you're typically very focused. That's a great one. I love that one. Another one that I was thinking about over the holidays is doing a jigsaw puzzle. My father loves to do these puzzles, and so we had one out for him over the holidays, and sitting there and examining closely the shapes and sizes of these puzzle pieces was a very mindful experience. So that's a great point. Now I'm going to talk about So going into the use of the Silvassa products, I should have a picture of this. Oops, it didn't pop up. So I thought there was a picture of the crystal wand on my slide and it disappeared, but I am going to attempt for this one to show you guys my video because, well, I'll explain it first and then I'll show you my video. But one of the things, if you have your crystal wand near you and your distressants, that is awesome. But if not, that's okay. One of the things I talk to my corporate clients about quite a bit is the importance of brain breaks. And our brains are designed to pulse rhythmically between spending and renewing energy. That's how our brains operate their best. That's how we achieve peak performance and get in the zone. And brain breaks between work blocks are an ideal time to integrate a little bit of mindfulness. So lately, I have been using my crystal wand is sitting in my office next to my computer, and I have been using that during my brain breaks, and it is amazing. So let's see if this video will cooperate at all. I'm trying to make.
Well, people. I just got the waiting for Dr. Kristen Race to reconnect sign. I'm guessing you all got that as well, but Kristen will be right back with us, I'm sure, in just a moment. Somebody else in the chat, did Kristen get disconnected there? Great. Thanks, Karen, for that. So, Kristen, you disappeared for us for a minute.
I know.
But now you're back. It does have the delay going.
I know. Okay. Well, let me do this. You guys can still hear me, okay, right?
That is correct.
I will explain what I do, and then you'll just see it on delay. But essentially what I do is I will put my distressants on my face, on half of my face. And I will turn on my wand, and then I integrate a little bit of breathing while I'm using the wand. So I will inhale as I lift it up, and then I exhale, bringing it down for that lymphatic drainage. So what it looks like, if you can see, is I breathe in and I exhale. And then I'll do it again. And I'm just getting a little different part of my neck each time, kind of starting back by my ear and then coming closer. And then working my way down my face. And then I will go across my forehead, breathing in, and then all the way down. So I realize that's not the best visual explanation, but I think you get the idea of it. And what I love about this is, number one, it feels really good. So that is a great little like stress reliever for me when I am in the midst of a busy day. And it takes just a couple of moments. I'm trying to get my slides back up now, which is not cooperating very well. Okay. So it's a great way. I apologize for these technical difficulties today. But just to kind of give me a reset, to get a little bit of breathing and also get those physical sensations that feel so good. And the fact is, when we're stressed, our brain signals oxygen and nutrients away from our skin and towards organs like the heart, lungs, and brain that are more essential to our survival. That's part of your stress response. And it also sends our brain signals to release all kinds of stress hormones. And these hormones can exacerbate pre-existing skin conditions like acne and eczema. So when I use my wand for my brain break, not only am I able to refocus my brain and return to my direct experience, but I get this little facial massage that boosts circulation, drawing those nutrients to my skin, reduces the puffiness of my tired eyes, and relieves that stress-related muscle tension that, for me, I know I totally carry in my forehead. So there are a lot of creative ways to use the crystal wand. And it might be something that you do in the morning and the evening, one or the other, or it's worth just putting it by your desk because it's a great little break in the middle of the day. So thinking about what is coming next. One of the really fun things about my job is working with the Silvassa team to create ways to integrate mindfulness into the use of all of the Silvassa products. So in the coming weeks, I'm going to be sharing more videos about how to integrate the products into mindfulness practices. We're going to start with these products that you are currently able to take advantage of in the kits that you're receiving, and also how you can use those to create conversations around mindfulness with the people that you're interacting with. And I also often post videos on Instagram that explain all kinds of mindful ways to build resilience to modern day stressors. So be sure to follow me there, and feel free to share any relevant videos with your following on social media. I try to keep those videos short and quick and give relevant tips to help us integrate mindfulness into our busy days. There's so many great ways to create conversations and connections around these topics and these products. And that's one of the reasons that I am so excited about this new adventure, as I'm sure it's one of the reasons why you guys are so excited as well. So I have some time for questions. If you want to, Kenny, I don't know if anything has come up recently in the question section. If you want to post a question in the chat now.
Kristen, I'm not seeing anything just yet. I'll keep an eye on it, obviously, for the next minute or two while we're still together. I did have something that popped up in my head, and I don't know if anybody else was wondering this, but as you were demonstrating the use of the wand, and we could get a sense of what you were trying to do. That made sense to us, even though the screen being choppy. Is there a minimum amount of time someone needs to use that in order to get the benefits from a brain perspective? To use that, I should say, in a mindfulness way, in order to get the benefits from a brain perspective?
Yes. So I would leave that to the product experts to talk to the minimum amount of time for impact on our skin, although I think the more the better. And from a mindfulness perspective, I can tell you that 2 or 3 breaths in the middle of a day are enough to start to regulate your nervous system. So what happens when we're stressed is we only breathe in the top quarter of our lungs. And a lot of the time during a busy day, you don't even realize you're stressed because you've just been going all day. And when you stop and you take a few breaths, and that first breath, it's actually almost painful when you expand your chest, that tells you you haven't been breathing very much today. So that can be a great tool just to do, like a few of those strokes up and down, a few of those deep breaths is enough to signal our prefrontal cortex to elicit a relaxation response, to come fully back online, and to bring our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems back into balance. So I think there's a myth out there often that you have to sit on a cushion for 20 minutes twice a day for these practices to be effective. And those little things throughout the day can really go a long way.
Great. Thank you for that. I am not seeing any other questions in the either the ask a question spot or the chat, I should say.
Okay. Great. Well, I just want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to be with us, for bearing with us during these technical difficulties. I will be creating some videos so you have a better sense of how to integrate mindfulness with these products. And feel free to reach out to me at any time. You can ping me on Instagram. If you have any questions, I would love to help you out in any way. That's what I'm here for. So have a wonderful evening, and I look forward to speaking with you guys again very soon. Bye-bye.